One of the most painful and confusing things about OCD is that it rarely latches onto something random. More often, it goes after the things that matter most to you: your relationship, your future, your values, your faith, your peace. And because it targets what you care about the most, it can leave you feeling ashamed, frightened, and deeply confused, as if the very fact that your mind has gone there must mean something terribly important. Because the things that OCD attacks are so important to you on a personal level, of course, when you experience them, it makes you want to fight against them, to get rid of them, to have that certainty about them. But, that's why they're so good, at getting us stuck in the OCD trap. OCD will give you loads of thoughts about the things that you care about most. It will give you those thoughts in a really horrible and on purpose, obnoxious way, just to get you stuck into the trap of overthinking, overanalyzing, and looking for that certainty. The fear that comes up with these things that we really care about is much more than fear that might come up about something that isn't so important for you. And so, of course, OCD will always attach itself to the things that we do really care about. But interestingly, that's also, a reason for why it's okay to disregard those things. When we really reflect on that idea that OCD is using the things that you care about most and giving you thoughts about those things on purpose to get you stuck in the trap, it can also inadvertently help you to realize that you don't need to worry about those things because OCD is just using it on purpose. And therefore, it can give you a bit more confidence to say, I can put that thing down without getting that 100% certainty. The cruel trick that OCD plays is this. It takes the fact that you care deeply about something and then uses that very care against you. It turns love into doubt, responsibility into fear, and sensitivity into endless mental rumination and checking. Back in the past, I used to really struggle with relationship OCD, and I would spend hours and hours each day ruminating, trying to figure out if I was really in love with my partner, or if actually this was just a kind of trap that I was kind of getting myself in. Perhaps I needed to break up with her now because I could be making this horrendous mistake, and if I allowed the relationship to go on any longer, it was just going to cause more and more problems for me. Unfortunately, in the past, this actually caused me to break up relationships with people not because the relationship wasn't right, but because I had so much anxiety and so much fear that I could be making a mistake that I thought the only way out is actually to break up with them. And this is such a shame because a lot of those relationships could have been, very healthy, positive relationships for me. But, I wasn't willing to give them a try because the OCD was so present. Relationships are important to me, and therefore OCD was using that against me. It knew that was a kind of weakness. And so it would keep going there. It would keep reminding me, getting me to ruminate on the relationship, to check time and time again, to try to have certainty that I wasn't making a mistake. And unfortunately, with OCD, the more that you ruminate about things, the more that you look for that certainty, the less sure you actually are. Perhaps you started out feeling fairly certain about your relationship, but because you ruminate on it so much, within a short amount of time, things can feel completely out of control. And it might be, morality. It might be related to health. It may be related to cleanliness. It may be related to the safety of other people. No matter what it is that you care about in your life, OCD will find a way to give you more thoughts about that thing and try to keep you stuck in the trap. I think one of the issues that people experience with this is because we're getting a lot of repetitive thoughts about the same thing. We can begin to believe that there's some kind of hidden truth going on there, that actually there really is something awful that you haven't unveiled. And that's the reason why you keep on getting these repetitive thoughts. That's why you keep getting such horrible ideas about these things that you really care about, because perhaps deep down, actually, you're a terrible person, or you're a monster, or, that thing really is a problem and you have to figure it out. But actually, the reality is actually much more boring than that. The reason for why you keep on getting those thoughts isn't because of what you're worrying about. It's because the OCD has recognized that that is important to you. And when that thing comes up, it creates a sense of urgency. And therefore, whenever that urgency is really present, well, you find yourself trying to figure it out and trying to make yourself feel better in the short term. And again, that is part of the OCD trap. Whenever you start experiencing urgency to fix something immediately, that's part of the way that you can recognize and know that OCD is present and playing its tricks on you. What keeps people stuck is not just that they have disturbing thoughts. It's that these thoughts feel too important not to solve. So they start analyzing, checking feelings, scanning their reactions, testing themselves, researching, doing all sorts of things to try to get more certainty about something that can never actually be settled through more compulsive thinking. What happens with OCD is we get a thought that we don't like, and then straight away huge anxiety comes up, and it kind of starts this process of problem solving. We get stuck up here in the prefrontal cortex, the analytical and problem solving part of the brain. And we tell ourselves, I'm just going to think about this a little bit until I feel a bit more clear about it, until I have more clarity. And then once I've thought about it enough, I'm going to be willing to then drop it and get on with the rest of my day. But of course, this is a very repetitive problem. We find ourselves there dealing with that situation time and time again. And even though we know it's not going to work because we have all the evidence to the contrary, we keep on doing that thing because, the fear about that important thing to us is so strong. The anxiety is so high. To not problem solve it feels that, it kind of feels like we're being a bad person, to try to not get that certainty about it. And, therefore we keep going back to that old pattern of behavior of problem solving it, even though we know deep down that it's not really working. And teaching people how to step out of that solving cycle is a huge part of the work I do inside my program. You can find out more in the show notes. One of the saddest parts of this process is that the more you monitor the thing that you love, the less naturally connected to it you often feel. And then OCD uses that disconnection as fresh evidence that something is wrong. For me, this showed up very much in my relationship because I was spending so much time, almost, 4, 5, 6 hours every day ruminating about my relationship. Whenever actually my girlfriend showed up, of course, I would be on edge, I would be anxious. And when I would see her, she would remind me of all of the anxiety, all of the uncertainty. And of course, that took the spontaneity and the fun out of the relationship. That feeling of closeness that I wanted to have with her, it would completely disappear because I would be so much in my head monitoring my feelings. Do I feel in love? Do I feel attracted? Is this the right person for me? That, of course, none of those actual feelings would come up in the way in which I wanted them to because I was demanding them to be here. When you can learn to let go of those things, even when they're about things that you really care about, that are really important to you, and you recognize that this is just OCD playing a game and that by doing that, it is disconnecting you from the very things that you really care about, well, it can help you to break free and to realize that this is just OCD. It's a trap. It's a trick. You don't have to play that game. Actually, the ball is in your court. You don't get to choose what pops up into your consciousness. Unfortunately, sometimes we do get intrusive thoughts, but we absolutely do get to choose how we respond to those things. And in that choice is all of your personal empowerment, all of your strength. It's all there waiting for you, but you've got to learn how to reach out and grab it and take it because it's yours. That ability to choose is actually your ability to get out of the OCD trap. Recovery begins to open up when you stop asking, what does this thought mean about me? And start asking, what is my mind trying to get me to do right now? And that is where things begin to change because you stop treating the content as the issue and start seeing the pattern of behavior underneath it. A huge part of this is learning how to spot when you've been triggered And when you're looking for that certainty, something that I try to teach people is that actually when we're triggered by something, you can feel it in the body and you can recognize it in the patterns of your thoughts, of your thinking. Typically when I'm triggered, I will feel it in my stomach, in my chest, often in my shoulders. My shoulders often become very tight. Sometimes I can feel clenching in my legs. There's all sorts of typical sensations that I often have in my body when I'm really activated. Also, there are typical thought patterns. I start trying to figure things out. I start ruminating. I start trying to have more certainty about that thing. Really, I'm just demanding too much control from the situation. A question that I like to ask myself in these situations is this: is what I'm doing right now, is it helping me to be the person that I really want to be? From a value-orientated perspective, is it helping me to live by those values and to be present? And, if OCD is present, you absolutely will not be living by those values because you'll be stuck in your head, you'll be analysing, and you'll be looking for certainty. If you are living by your values, then most likely you're going to be more present. And, by asking that question, it can be a really helpful way to reveal, if the behavior that you're doing is actually helping you or if actually it's just feeding the OCD. So if OCD has been targeting what you love most, please do not take that as proof that those things are wrong or fake. Very often, OCD goes there precisely because those things matter to you. The problem is not that your mind has produced scary content. The problem is what happens when you start treating that content like an emergency, like something that needs to be fixed. And real recovery begins when you stop trying to think your way back to safety and start changing your responses instead. And if this resonates with you, I do have a 12-week program to help you to break free from OCD. It includes weekly one-to-one coaching sessions. There's also weekly videos, meditations, worksheets. There's an optional group session and community, all sorts of things to help you to overcome OCD and anxiety. If you're interested in applying for that, you can by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes and you can book in there for a free discovery call. Many thanks, and I will see you next time.